Back to the Culture Call on Praise 93.3 with L. Spencer Smith. Our desire is to reach and empower the community by discussing a cross-section of relevant topics from various perspectives that are essential to its growth and interpersonal connections. Be sure to save our call-in number, 205-752-4800. Be sure to install the free Praise 93.3 app so you can send L. Spencer Smith a message or topic idea. Search for WTSK in your app store.
This is the world premiere.
Great morning, great morning, great morning, precious people. It's another edition. That's right. Top of the week. Right here on the Culture Call with L. Spencer Smith on Praise 93.3 FM. It is the place where Tuscaloosa absolutely meets the world. Yeah. And we are here this morning, and I'm telling you, it's a beautiful Monday morning. I know it's a little overcast. I know it's a little shadowing. Yeah. But we are here, and we are expecting a wonderful day. It is the place that we talk a little bit about everything from society to sports, education, economics, from religion to relationships. And of course, we are here to create a safe space to have empowering conversations, right here on the Culture Call. Listen, I want you all to do me a favor. Go ahead and download the free 99 app. Yeah, right on your phone, on your Apple or your Android device, and download the Praise 93.3 FM app and listen to us from all around the world. That's right, all around the world. We want you to hear us in Tokyo, in Japan, wherever we are. We want to hear you from all around the world. Listen, not only that, I want you to go ahead and email me your public service announcements right here at Culture Call. Yeah, culturecall.praise@gmail.com. Let me do it again. culturecall.praise@gmail.com, and give us the opportunity to let everybody, lottie-dottie, everybody, potty, whoever you want to know, let everybody know what's happening in your neck of the woods. We want to make sure that we create traffic for your church, your organization, your events, your fraternity, sorority, whatever it is. Yeah, absolutely. We want everybody to know what it is. Why? Because we do it better when we do it together. Listen, also save our number, 205-752-4800. That's 205-752-4800, and call into the show and be a part of the conversation. Guess what? Because I want to hear from you. I definitely want to hear from you. So listen, I want you to make sure that you do that for me. That's right. Do that for me and make sure that we have your information and I hear your voice today. Listen. It's going to be a great day. It's going to be a great Monday, right? So I need you to sit back, relax, grab you some coffee or tea or water, and get hydrated. Actually, that's right. Yeah, some Maxwell House or some Starbucks. Y'all know what I love, my caramel macchiato. I've been pushing y'all to get this chamomile tea or this green tea to help you, the metabolism, get you a little caffeine kick, or go ahead and get you some good old water, some alkaline water, and get those cells, get down to the cellular level, and let's get to talking about the culture. Listen, this day, today, the day before the country celebrates the 4th of July, Independence Day, we want to talk about this whole idea of freedom. Yeah, we want to talk about this today. I am itching to talk about it. Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because number one, I think it is an apropos conversation for us to have. Yeah, indeed it is. Number two, I believe that that as we begin to talk about it, I think, it will bring some enlightenment to us, especially in our community. And I know many other communities might be listening to me. I mean, people always tell me when I go every place, black, white, whatever it is, hey, we really enjoy the Culture Call. And listen, from the bottom of a grateful heart, I really appreciate that. But I need you all to strap in this morning because I want to talk from the topic today, freedom for who? Freedom for who? Because I think this country, our state, our city, our community needs to begin to have intelligent conversations, heartfelt conversations, provocative conversations around the whole idea of this issue of freedom and liberty. You know, a couple of weeks ago, maybe about 3 weeks ago, we celebrated Juneteenth. And of course, we understand that Juneteenth is really not when the Emancipation Proclamation was written, but when the slaves in Texas found out that they were free. Right, that's when they found out in that June time frame, and so we celebrate Juneteenth. Juneteenth was originally a holiday kind of relegated to those Texans at the time, but it was made a national federal holiday. Yeah. And so now, you know, it's on the calendar, everyone, and whether you celebrate it or not, regardless of how you feel about it or not, it's on the calendar. And it's a time where the black people celebrate the total freedom of everyone in this country, that we understand from a historical perspective that freedom and liberty did not come because Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. That's not when it came. It came when those slaves in Texas found out. But what we also understand is that not all slaves were free, even on that Juneteenth, that Juneteenth information that came to those in Texas. We understood that slavery was a part of the capitalistic system. And I think that's very important as we start this conversation, because the moment that you begin to add monetary value and to human labor and human persons, that is slavery. But here's the fact of the matter. The fact of the matter is that capitalism from Europe to this country has always been about slavery. Capitalism and slavery, you cannot separate them, right? And that is really what the South was fighting over. It wasn't states' rights as much as they say it was. And indeed, watch this, because it was states' rights over the right to keep slavery. That's the point. That was the main point, right? It was states' rights. And they were fighting, those states, the southern states were fighting for the right to have slaves, because slaves were producing a capitalistic, a monetary and capitalistic system here in the South that was unheard of, with cotton, with all of the produce, all of that. So it made the South a veritable economic engine in this country that they could not do by themselves. And so slavery, from Africa, the transatlantic slave, all of that happens. And of course, I don't want to recapitulate so much history that I don't talk about really what this whole idea that we're talking about today, freedom for who. What I want to talk about is this country, recent events, and how it is still rooted in the historicity of all that happened in this country from 1492 all the way up to 2023, excuse me. There seems to be a mentality and an aspect of those in this country of that everybody's free and that justice is for all. And although that is good motto, that is good mantra, that is not reality, manifested reality. And it's very difficult for people to talk about because of what side of history their people fall on. I think that's very important. When you talk to some people, why we always got to talk about race? Why we got to talk about ethnicity? Because race and ethnicity has been the theme of this country from day one. Let's try it again. From the Native Americans to the Africans that you brought over, race has always been a central theme of the United States of America. It has always been that, right? And no matter how people, deal with the lie of being colorblind, because it is a lie, because red when you see it, blue when you see it, black when you see it, white when you see it, right? You can acknowledge the rainbow, right? But you don't acknowledge it without color, because without color, you wouldn't even see it. Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, yeah, green, blue, indigo, and violet, all of that rainbow of colors you can see. That's the brilliance of the rainbow. But then there are some in this country that try to hallucinate as if we as people cannot see color, that we are colorblind. Now, here's the point of the parcel, that from the beginning of the human existence in the world, race as we know it was not a factor. Right? It was, yes, indeed, tribes. It was territory. It was, those kinds of things. Where you came from, what was your origin? That's how people were differentiated. But it was not according to race as it was defined in the 15th and 16th century by white Europeans to demark class, to demark worth and value. Right? And so every person was a part of the human race, right? But then again, when you get to the 15th and the 16th century, it began to become along color lines. And they had a whole hypothesis and theory of, a framework of intelligence connected to race. They had a framework of servitude connected to race. And what they were doing was trying to create a triangle, a pyramid scheme, if you will, that put white Europeans at the top and everybody else under them as a sign of supremacy or superiority. Right? And that became the ideology of the day until the present. Until the very present time. Like when they came from England and settled and came to this country that was already populated with people, the reason why they say Columbus founded this country, the reason why they say that is because they could not believe that even though people who were already here of supposed African origin or Native American, what we call Native American origin, because of that, they were like, well, this is ours. We're going to drive you away out of our land because we discovered it, because there is no way you could have done that, because according to our pyramid and according to our chart, you can't be this intelligent. You cannot facilitate this kind of civilization. You can't, any of that. You can't, no, we are the purveyor. So they begin to rewrite history, right? And I'm talking about those Europeans at the time. They begin to rewrite history. But what they know about history and civilization, they got from the African continent or black people. That the Moors, who are black people, began to teach them who were uncivilized. The Moors came to Europe from the African countries. There is no such thing, when we talk about geography as geography, not political geography, but geography proper. There's no such thing as the Middle East, right? It is all Africa. Libya is in Africa. Egypt is in Africa. Oman is in Africa. All of the oil-producing countries, it's not the Middle East. That's a political nomenclature so as not to place that kind of wealth on the African continent where dark people reside. But the reality is all of those countries are a part of the African continent. Africa is not a country. It's a continent. Right? And so all of this is lines of demarcation for political and positional gain. Right? And so you have all of that falling out through history, this whole concept of race. And so, El, why are you bringing all this up? I want to bring this up because throughout the history of this country, most of the societal developments, most of the societal restraints, most of the societal evolutions and revolutions have been around race and ethnicity. That's what it is. With the whole penchant of white superiority, the white race being at the top of the supposed pyramid that was created in England, brought over here and utilized to disenfranchise people. In other words, you imported Africans to simply treat them as beasts of burdens, to disenfranchise them of their humanity. That's exactly what happened in this country, right? And to ignore that is ridiculous. If you tell the American story of freedom and liberty, but you leave out the whole narrative that you castigated and that you put in place servitude, when you put in place, it's a hilarious when you begin to talk to some people like, well, why can't you just forget that? Why? No. Who does that exonerate by forgetting it, right? The Jews are not forced to forget the Holocaust, you know? Asians and Chinese and Japanese are not, you don't tell them to forget Hiroshima and Nagasaki when we dropped the bomb on them. But why are you telling black people to forget about it and let's go ahead, this land is your land, this land is my land? No, it's not. Because even today, in Hilton Head, South Carolina, there is a 95-year-old black grandmother that's fighting a realty company trying to take her land so that they can build condominiums. Don't tell me this land is your land, this land is my land. Don't say that, because it's a lie. And we can ignore it. They can ignore it in this country all they want to, but we know the truth. And you cannot talk about, again, freedom, history, and justice in this country and not speak about the atrocities of the transatlantic slave trade and how slavery from the time the inception of this country all the way up to the Emancipation Proclamation with Abraham Lincoln, and then through Jim Crow, because after the Emancipation Proclamation, you have what they call Reconstruction, right? Where blacks begin to be a part of the Senate and of congressmen represented in the political ideology of everything. Right. You cannot talk about that. And then because of the positioning and the repositioning in of black people, proving their intelligence, proving their academic prowess, proving, that they were industrious, that they indeed were thinkers, that people from the South with the, White Citizens Council and the Ku Klux Klan formulated in Indiana, all of those different kinds of not actually Tennessee, actually Pulaski. All of those things with Nathan Bedford, all of those things, they begin to uprise and overthrow. So every time black people would do something, build Black Wall Street, here comes a revolt against them. And Rosewood, here comes a revolt against them, right? And so when you start talking about that, then you get to the 70s and the late 60s and what we call post civil rights movement with regards to Lyndon B. Johnson, Martin Luther King, and all of those fighting for civil rights, Fair Housing Acts, Public Accommodation Acts, all those different kinds of things. Then you create this governmental assistance program and the projects and the ghetto, and you put certain caveats, about it. Couldn't make but a certain amount. You were guaranteed housing, but you couldn't make a certain amount, and you put them in cities, and you're looking at the disenfranchisement. How does disenfranchisement and poverty affect these people? If you take away their resources, but you promise them the bare minimum, right? And so that's where you get this whole idea of Section 8 housing and all these different kinds of things that this country has come up with, trying still under the guise of helping, but really the root cause of that is, watch this, slave mechanics. We're talking about freedom now, right? And then you begin to set up a structure and a labeling that black folks are lazy. Wait a minute. You mean the same black folks that built the country? You mean the same black folks that you brought over because of the strength of their labor? Then you talk about the same black folks that built Washington, D.C. and major cities that with their architecture. You're talking about the same black folks that Benjamin Banneker came from, right? That set out, that surveyed the entire city of D.C., your capital, right? You talking about them? Those kind of folks that have picked cotton and then plowed fields and nursed your babies and all that, they're the lazy people? That's what you're going to do? No, they're not lazy. They have been disenfranchised economically, right? See, but if you call it lazy and then you keep presenting it like that, they will begin to believe that they are lazy. They will begin to believe that, about themselves. Let me say that. They will begin to believe the label of laziness about themselves. But it doesn't line up with their history. It does not line up with the history of people, of the African American people. We're still talking about freedom, but freedom for who? Just walking you through a brief timeline. That's all I'm trying to do. And so we get to the 80s where you start seeing, watch this, a prominent connection between religion and race relations. In other words, you begin to see in this country where, but first of all, let me back up because, Republicans weren't as what they are and Democrats were really the problem in the South. And then during Nixon, the Southern strategy, they switched. Right? Then Republicans became Democrats and Democrats became Republicans over what? Race. Over how we gonna treat these black folks in this country. And so it is today. Then they get to the whole things because they don't want segregation and they don't want to be able, the Supreme Court and everybody said, well, you cannot receive federal tax deductions and become a nonprofit if you exclude black people, if you do not integrate. So what Bob Jones University in South Carolina did is that they began to create this whole system of what they call the religious right. And they began with Jerry Falwell and all of them in those days, this whole idea against abortion. But the whole issue of abortion that was founded by this eugenicist, right, which was this eugenics is this whole idea of taking the race and working to annihilate them, right? This country is where Hitler got his whole idea of gas chambers, of genocide. But that's what they were trying to do to the African Americans in this country. That's where Hitler got it from, right? And so, and of course, Hitler was not the worst, man in history. It was King Leopold and what he did to the black people, millions and black people in Congo. Yeah, children in Congo. But of course, that's on the African continent and not here. So we just say Hitler was. But Hitler and the Jews was nowhere near what King Leopold did. Nowhere. He was not even in the same stratosphere. King Leopold was evil personified, right? It matters when you're looking at the lion and the hunter. It matters if the hunter tells the story. The lion is always going to look like he was the bad guy. But the lion was minding his own business. The hunter came into his territory, right? And this is the thing that we have about history in this country, that the hunter keeps telling what history is going to be. And it's okay. So let me go where I was. And so now you have this whole idea because they're like, well, wait a minute. We're never going to, from a political perspective, we're never going to win over this integration thing. So let's adopt this whole abortion issue because abortion was not always an issue for the people right now who fight for it. Pro-life was not always an issue at all. It was not. It was a strategy to divide, watch this, divide the black vote because they knew black people are highly religious. We are socially conservative. That's what we really are. We really are. We are financially liberal, economically liberal, but we are very socially conservative. And they begin to see that. And so what that did, fighting for abortion and pro-life, divided the black church. It divided the black community on the lines of they killing babies. But where did that come from? Where did that whole idea come from? And with no statistics and all that, because what they've learned how to do is propaganda. They know how to skew statistics. See? And so, we have this divide. In this country now, they supplanted, watch this, being racially divided to calling it religiously divided. So they've supplanted racial intolerance with religious intolerance, where black people now can borrow into religious intolerance, right? But the truth of the matter is the root cause of all of that was because of racial intolerance. They just found an issue to divide us, right? Fast forward till 2008. No, we got to go back to Reagan because Reagan, my God, Reagan was still pushing, and they love Reaganomics. They love all that. But when you start reading and really studying what Reagan did in this country, it's amazing. It's amazing. It further divided the country. And of course, Reagan, and then you had all those other ilks. Then you get to Barack Obama. Now y'all should be satisfied because y'all got a black president. And that's even today, that is what people normally say. Y'all got a black president, so you should be satisfied. Y'all's is free now. But just because we've got a Barack Obama, and just because we've got a Tyler Perry, and just because we have an Oprah Winfrey, right, does not mean that our people are experiencing the freedom that the authors of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence speak of. And we're going to talk about it in the next segment. But now we got to talk about these Supreme Court rulings about affirmative action. Yeah, affirmative action. See, if you keep looking from a historical perspective, even while we are alive now, the whole issue that the Supreme Court said, and I'm going to drop you a little dime, it says that affirmative action could not exist where race is involved. And that only involves one people, not legacies, not gender, not economic decisions, but race. That means you cannot look and you can't favor a person to be in these places because of their race, right? They're trying to undo histories. The 6 conservatively active justices on the Supreme Court without a real case, right? Without a real case says you can't look at race anymore. And my question is, freedom for who? That's my question that we're going to talk about today. Freedom for who? After all of this history, we're still fighting for freedom. We're still fighting over a concept you created, and now you just want us to ignore. No. Before we get to the 4th of July, we need to talk about this whole issue of freedom and justice and ask the question, freedom for who? Listen, that's been your centering moment. This is the Culture Call with L. Spencer Smith right here on Praise 93.3 FM. It's a beautiful Monday morning right here. And I want you to keep it right here all day. Not all day, but at least from 10 to 12. Yeah, sure enough. And we've got more to come. Don't miss it.
This is a world premiere.
Hey, my people, and we are back right here on the Culture Call with L. Spencer Smith on Praise 93.3 FM on this marvelous Monday. That's right, marvelous Monday. A little bit overcast, but I think it's going to turn out to be an absolutely beautiful day. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Yes, and as we are actually approaching July 4th, Independence Day in this country, I thought it'd be apropos for us to talk about freedom and justice and what that looks like in our community, what that looks like in our country. And if we look according to current events, we've got some things to do. We got some work to do, some things to talk about. And I don't want us, to be remiss in saying what we need to say concerning these matters. One of the things that frustrate me so much when I begin to talk to our people is that this distancing away from, the reality of what is going on in our country with regards to race and ethnicity. And it seems, when you bring it up, there's always this negative aspect, and then especially if you bring it up to, some of my white friends and counterparts, why we got to always talk about race? Why does everything have to be about race? And I remind them, the race question, the race issue did not start with black people. I start there. That's where I start. I start that even with my people. I'm like, look, we didn't create the conversation. The conversation was not created by black people. No. We've had to discuss it as it relates to our freedom and liberty in this country and justice. But the whole idea is that our conversation concerning race is an effect. It is not the cause. And sometimes I have to remind my white brothers and sisters that, but here's the reality, that, history says that your folks, maybe not indirectly, but your race is the cause that we in this country have to talk about the concept and the construct of race and its systematic, almost systematic underpinnings that are laid in every area of society, in religion, in education, in economics, that there is always policies, political nature, athleticism in sports. It is an underlying premise in everything we do in this country, and to ignore it is to ignore a facet in a functionary existence of something in this country that continues to hold us back as a race, as a people. And when I say as a race, I'm talking about as a human race, that the distinctions did not come from African American, Black, Hispanic, Asian, that those differentiations did not come from them. Did not come from us, rather. It came from you guys. And so I think one of the things that we have to do is begin to, take ownership and really be honest about the context in which, race affects everything in this country. Race affects everything. Now, there is a cloud and a shroud, rather, that makes us think that, if you bring up the racial element, if you bring up all of that and you do not live in this, this imaginary utopian kumbaya moment, that somehow you are hateful or you are operating in hatred. And if you're Black, you're operating in reverse racism, or you're the racist. I love that one because that's really hilarious, right? Because racism is not just, disliking or preferring. That's one race over another. That's what you would call prejudice. But racism, this is academic, this is documented. Racism is having the power to disenfranchise and or disallow a particular person's freedom, growth, entrance, access, based upon their race. Well, there is only one group of people in this country that fit that title, that have the power, that make the policy, that set the foundation and the premise for that to be a reality. And that's not Black, brown, or any other color, yellow people. That's not us. And that's a fact. And if you can't face the facts, you can't be a part, or you're telling me you're not going to be a part of the solution of helping fix the problem, right? Now, I think when we begin to look at, let's just start with something really quick, current events. When we look at a few of the school decisions, the Supreme Court decisions that happened last week, right? With regards to affirmative action, right? And so the case was filed about what they call Students for Fair Admissions, led by this conservative activist. And that conservative is always a sign that, race is involved, right? So, it's a telltale sign, right? A conservative activist, Edward Blum, right, who is best known for his efforts to challenge affirmative action policies, right? And here's what they say. Okay, let me just tell you what they say. Now, what they say is that I'm trying to figure out how we say this. Okay, that affirmative action, especially in education, says that because of the historical racial disenfranchisement and the systemic institutional dysfunction that and aversions that race, judgment and segregation and all the history of slavocracy has set up in this country against Black people and other minorities, that there will be a special selection to allow those people who are qualified access to certain to areas of placements that was just subjugated or just placed there for whites. In other words, Princeton, Yale, all of the Ivy Leagues, Black people could not go there. They created those systems much akin to how they created Bob Jones University, right? I think the first Black in Harvard was probably W.E.B. Du Bois. And he said, when he graduated, he said, it was their privilege to have me at Harvard, and so, but I believe that's with the first one, in that Ivy League situation. So what they did, what the government did in setting this affirmative action policy was to make sure that those who had been historically disenfranchised would have access based upon race as one of them, race which affected Black people mainly, right? And then gender, which of course is women, socioeconomic, watch this, socioeconomic status, which affected Southerners. Try it again. Southerners, white, black, Hispanic, Southerners, because they wouldn't let Southerners in those schools because of their poverty, the low, the economic status, right? So the affirmative action wasn't just about black people, but it included black people. So, but when you deal with affirmative action, how this country has dealt with affirmative action, it has always been on label on its face about race, when in fact the main persons who were benefited by the affirmative action were white women. Because they too were second-class citizens. They too could not vote, right? They too were disenfranchised. That this country was built off of white male elitists, right? And the access to all of the systems of this country were only to access for them. And so when they dealt with affirmative action, it allowed also white women to benefit from that as well. Well, Edward Brum got these Asian students, right? And saying, here's the deal. Now, here is the insulting part. They're saying, and not just these Asian students, but white students have been saying this, because I heard it when I was getting ready to go to college, right? Even though I didn't want to go to Princeton, Yale, or any of those schools, I've heard it as a matter of conversation when I started researching schools, that there was some white people that said, well, the reason why I didn't get in is because of affirmative action. They allowed these black people to get into Harvard and Princeton and Yale and Brown and Smith and Dartmouth and all this, Columbia, all of those, right? They allowed them to get in, as if it wasn't merit based. So here's what they were saying. It was like the only way that you got into this university was because you were black, right? And so the idea, though, that the smart, qualified white and white adjacent folks, and let me just talk about you white adjacent folks, that you are Hispanic by his ethnicity, Asian by ethnicity, but you align yourself with white adjacency, which simply means that you trend to do what they do and vote and see the world through their particular, social perspective, right? That's what it means to be white adjacent. So they were saying qualified white and white adjacent folks were overlooked for dumb, less qualified, academically less intelligent black folks and minority folks, Hispanic folks, right? Right? Which of course is racist on its face. I mean, prima facie case of racism, right? Because what you're saying is that they go find the dumbest blacks and give them your spot when, in Yale and Princeton, when in fact you couldn't have got in anyway. Or the only reason why you got in is because you were an athlete or because you are a legacy, that your parents were there or they gave big money. So you didn't say that. You don't say that. And so what the Supreme Court just said is that you can't, affirmative action, the racial context of the affirmative action part is over. It's unconstitutional. Wait a minute. Is it in your Constitution that black people are 3/5 of a human being? So if you're going to write that, if that's in your founding documents, how is then affirmative action unconstitutional? How is that done? Right? I mean, think about it. The same country that would say that these people are not human, right, are 3/5 of a human being, coming back to say now we're not going to allow them access because of their color is really, it's retro foolishness, right? It's retro foolishness. You get what I'm saying? That in this country, historically, black people could not go, in this very city, could not go to the universities around this country founded by white people and for white people, because that's what they originally thought, right? And, we had to fight. The National Guard literally had to come to this city. It's, at the University of Alabama. And, because the governor was saying, absolutely, segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. That's that's documented history, right? So it was a fight even to get there, to now say, oh, well, to do that based upon racial lines is against the law. Really? Are we serious here? Is this a joke? Are we living in real time here? And what is funny, which is Clarence Thomas, Judge Clarence Thomas, who is a Harvard grad, right? Who got into Harvard by affirmative action. Okay, wait a minute. Rewind. Yeah. He got into Harvard via affirmative action. Clarence Thomas, the same black judge that replaced Thurgood Marshall, got into Harvard by virtue of affirmative action. Reagan, I believe, appointed Clarence Thomas to be over the equal opportunity office in the country. You see, so his whole premise was defending race and this kind of situation. Gets to the Supreme Court and says that this whole affirmative action thing is not unnecessary. Wait a minute, hold on, bro. But how did you would not have been even in the pot to even be on the Supreme Court if you did not at least get access to Harvard. How? Via affirmative action. Now in 2023, see, that's what I'm talking about, white adjacent. That now you're talking about, it doesn't serve any purpose anymore. But did it serve a purpose for you? Are you looking at what's happening in the country? Are you looking at the bills that's being done? Are you looking at all of the things that's going on? And now, which says that's a conservative activism. That's conservative activism. That's not justice. That's not about justice. It really is not a case, right? Everything should be built on a meritocracy. Well, wait a minute. Hold on. For the life of me, when I was in school, they said I had to make A work because my A plus will be equivalent to their BC. That's the way we were taught. So we always had an ethic that we had to be better, that we had to do more. We always had a particular ethic that we had to merit being where we were, even the little places where we were. In the little country high school where I was in South Carolina, across South Carolina, I had to be better, had to do better than everybody else. I graduated third in my class. And my counselor, my white counselor, wanted me to go to technical school. Third in my class. And she's like, I think wait a minute. No, my parents was like, absolutely not. That brain, you mean that's the best you can offer him? No. My band director told me, nope, you're going to Florida A&M University, because I've always wanted to go to an HBCU. So the Harvards and the Princetons, they were never on my scale. They were never on my radar. I always wanted to go to an HBCU. But the whole connotation of why HBCUs exist is over this issue of pre-affirmative action. Exactly. It was right, because we couldn't go to yours. We started off as the State Normal College in Florida, in Tallahassee, Florida. And they didn't even name us a university. They didn't name us a college. Yeah, we started off as that State Normal School. Then we went to FAMC, Florida A&M College, and then we grew to the number Florida A&M University. Right. You see, and so it's this whole notion that affirmative action was something that, was used to give us an unfair advantage. Well, see, the problem is that we had been experiencing an unfair disadvantage based upon our color. And what Lyndon B. Johnson did, say, hey, we need to put this affirmative action that will create access for them, those who are qualified, to go after them and give them a seat at the table where they didn't have access. See, it's a different kind. When you begin to look at it from a full historical perspective, then you will understand what the Supreme Court just did was wind the clock back. Wind it back. The president of Harvard is a black woman, right? You begin to wind the clock back and say, and maybe, watch this, let me do this. Maybe you're trying to wind it forward and say, oh, well, it doesn't matter. And if you think, because it's going to be interesting in the months to come to see exactly who gets in, because I think once we begin to look at that, we'll really begin to see exactly the effect, whether positive or negative, of what the Supreme Court just decided. And that's the facts. Yeah. That's what it is. Listen, this is the Culture Call with L. Spencer Smith. I know we hitting a provocative subject today right here on Praise 93.3. Keep it right here. We've got so much more to come. Don't miss it.
This is the world premiere.
And we are back. It's the top of the hour, 11 a.m. on a beautiful, magnificent Monday morning right here on the Culture Call with L. Spencer Smith on Praise 93.3 FM. That's right. And it is my prayer that you are having a marvelous day hanging out with me. That's right. The day before the 4th, hanging out with me. And I know you're getting your ribs marinated and making your potato salad and maybe, shucking some corn or whatever y'all having tomorrow, preparing for folks to come over. Got your watermelon, your peaches, and all your good summer fruits. Yeah, I hope that you're preparing, and listen, let me know where you are and shoot me a plate. Listen, your boy loves to eat. Yes, I do. I want some good old barbecue. Damn, if you got a good fish fry, I'll come by there as well. Absolutely. And I'm not talking about that tilapia and salmon. I'm tired of that. I want some brim, some crappie. You know how it is. I'll even take a piece of fried snapper, something. I want something crunchy. I don't want nothing baked. Nothing grilled, right? Except my barbecue or maybe a burger or something. Listen, I want you to have a safe July 4th. I know a lot of you, might be boycotting it. I get it, especially the younger generation, but I'm believing that it's going to be a great day on tomorrow. It's supposed to be a little warmer than it is today. So enjoy the cool that we have in so far as 85, 87, 90 is cool. It's been triple digits, a lot last week, and it's promised to return. And so when we get an overcast sky and the sun is not beaming down on our heads and causing us to have, our sunscreen on, we are grateful, right? It's so many people like, I'm ready for the summer. Then summer comes peeking from the behind those clouds in Alabama, and then you staying in the house. We ain't outside. We are in the air condition, and I get it. So yeah, let's prepare to have an amazing 4th and with family and friends and all of that. Listen, we're having a provocative conversation here on the Culture Call, and I wanted to talk about freedom for who? Because in this country, we really need to have honest discussion, and discussions are going on all across the country. Please, now don't think that the only conversation is happening right here on the Culture Call, but I want to be a part of that conversation because, again, as I always say, I don't want my community to be late, last, and lost, and we need to know exactly what's happening, right? Especially with the SCOTUS decisions, the Supreme Court decisions against the racial aspect of affirmative action, and you're going to keep hearing me say that because they did not knock down affirmative action, right? They knocked down the racial aspect of affirmative action. Okay, let me say that because I think that is very important and very valuable for you and I to know, right? Because they're trying to send a particular message. Yeah. They're trying to send a particular message. I mean, this is the same court that says, certain things in Alabama, they had to redraw certain districts. The Secretary of State was trying to push, so yeah, they have to redraw that because they recognize racial disenfranchisements with regards to how municipalities and some sections of the state have been drawn to disenfranchise black people. But then they make this ruling that when it comes to affirmative action, the racial aspect, not the legacy, not the socioeconomic, not the gender aspect, but the racial aspect is being done away with, is unconstitutional. And you and I know if you got any modicum of sense in your head, you know full well what that means. I mean, listen, you have to be blind. You can't be paying attention if you don't know that when they knock down and say only the racial aspects of that particular law is not constitutional. You have to understand that. You also have to understand what it means for them with regards to student loans, because who takes out the most student loans? African Americans. Absolutely. And so, no, y'all going to pay us this money back. Yeah, that's in other words, right? Now, you swiped out millions of dollars of PPP government loans that happened during the pandemic. You did for all of that. A lot of the government officials, a lot of the Republican and Democratic officials in Congress got their loans forgiven to the tune of millions of dollars. But what you just said to people, to the regular people, that we can't forgive $20,000 to $40,000 of your student loan. Attorneys generals across the South got together and said, no, that's not constitutional. See, and when you begin to look at policy, when you begin to look at governmental structure, when you begin to look at bills, when you begin to look at, certain people go to Congress to do certain things. See, nobody just goes to Congress, especially not in this hour, that does not have a particular agenda, that's not speaking up for a particular interest, right? And so I think it is very important. I just want to put this particular segue in here just to let you know that we're in another election season. Yes. And I am building up our show and our voice because I want people to know that, yes, Culture Call, coming on Culture Call, is going to affect your bottom line vote. And I don't care who you are. Absolutely. Because I think those who are in political positioning are in debt to the people that elect them to do exactly what they say they're going to do. Here is the unfortunate thing. The Supreme Court is not an elected office, and it's a lifetime appointment. So, yeah, unless somebody is sick right now, we're dealing with whether Joe Biden and this Democratic Senate elects to expand the court, moving it from 9 to whatever number needs to balance it out, right? Maybe 13, Yeah, we kind of stuck with these folks. We're kind of stuck with this, right? And the whole idea, see, there is a flaw when we talk about a meritocracy. Now, what meritocracy says is that you advance based upon the merits. That means that you've got to measure up or merit having access. You got to merit going to Princeton, merit going to Yale, merit going to these other places. You got to merit getting a seat on this bus. You got, right. But see, the issue becomes when you understand how they set up standardized testing, SAT and ACT. See, those tests were tests that had the idea, the founders of those tests, the college boards, had the whole idea of weeding out most of the minority people because they put the test in a place where the education was so, that they couldn't go to these particular schools, that they could get into a lower state school. They could get into an HBCU, but having these prime categories because they really didn't necessarily care. But these tests were designed to keep people out that they didn't want in to these particular schools based upon merit, but its foundational factor was race, right? There's a whole ideology that, again, it goes all the way back to their construct in the 15th and the 16th century that these people don't merit. These people are animalistic. These people are beastly. These people are only good to be like camels, oxen, donkeys, beasts of burden. They're only good for servitude. They're only good for Jezebels. They're only good for step and fetching. They're only good for that, to serve us, to clean up our houses, to pick our cotton, to clean our store, to cook our collard greens, to take care of our children, all that. That's all. They were not supposed to be a part of society. Right. So that black people were supposed to be and to remain the hired help of the country. And that's fact. And so then when you hear somebody talk about, well, it should be merit based. Wait a minute. Hold on. Then there is a test that teaches merit or that measures merit, but it is skewed to a particular sector of people who have this particular education, who have been given these particular vocabulary words, who have taken this kind of math and done this kind of reading, right? And so, but on the face, it's all merit. You just didn't merit getting into our school. You just couldn't make the grade. When in fact, most of the people who are there didn't merit it and couldn't make the grade. They just had a legacy. They had a father, a grandfather, a grandmother, a mother who graduated from there, who attended there, who taught there, right? And so, yeah, we just gonna let them in. We're gonna let them in because there's a library named after your grandfather. There's a hall, a dorm named after your great grandmother, right? Right. And so the way that you merited was through the dollar. Was through some economic advantage, through some relative nepotism advantage that you have access and a seat at this table, but it's not merit. You didn't merit that. Exactly. And so I think it's important, right? It's also important that, who's even labeled these schools Ivy League? That's a whole nother level of thought. That who says that this is, they're going to teach another level of education better than any other school? Who labels that? Who says that? Who said that? Where did that idea come from? Right? And so that's important when you begin to understand how the construct is. Now, why are you talking about it like this, from this framework and from this vantage point? Oh, thank you. Glad that you asked. The whole idea is freedom and liberty, because most of the laws, most of the judges, most of the politicians, most of them in this country come from those schools. So they have already stated that when you go to this school, when you go to that school, that means you have the cognitive and cognitive mindset. You have the intelligentsia. You have done the academic work to set perpetual policy and institutions in this country that come from a handful of schools. You see what I'm saying? Right. And so you're like, oh, okay. So yeah, those schools are determining what the primary policies of the country is. That's a fact. That is a fact. And the whole idea is, who said that? Who said that? As black people, for me, in my mind, our Ivy League was Morehouse and Spelman. Yeah, that's what our Ivy League was. That in my mind, And then as I started, getting closer to going to college, it was FAMU, it was NCAT, it was Xavier in Louisiana, right? We created our own system of what we considered to be, quote unquote, Ivy League for African Americans. Exactly. Right. Spelman being an all girls school, Morehouse being an all men's school, all boys school. You know what I'm saying? And it was that kind of idea in our community that when you said you graduated from Morehouse, you graduated from Spelman, there was a particular look, there was a particular thing, But, it was that mirroring, which I don't know if that was good and or bad. I don't know if that was good or bad, because I don't think we should mirror disenfranchising culture. I don't think we should. I don't think we should create something that looks like what they look like and then hold our people and other people to the same merit, right? Or to the same lack of merit, right? I don't think so. I don't think we should look among our people and begin to qualify and or disqualify of this unknown merit that some, highfalutin person set up and say that you're not worthy to be a part of our school. No, I don't think that's fair either. No. I don't think we should use what we do to disenfranchise our people, our own people, But that's the reality. The reality is that sometimes we too can set up things that bar our own people out. And we've got to be careful of that, right? I think that's very important as we continue this discussion on freedom for who? Because the freedom is not for everybody. It's not for anybody. If someone has to be a slave to my ideology, whether that ideology is religious, economic, societal, whatever the ideology in my mind that disenfranchises the full humanity and brilliance of someone else and worth and value of what they bring to the table, then it should not be an operation in society. Period. Full stop. And there's no further discussion about that. You know, the paper bag test, the colorism that oftentimes goes on even in our community, we've got to check on that. You know, we got, because again, it's all about the colorism argument is all a part to being white adjacent. That the closer, here's the deal. The people in Florida, the Hispanics, the Cubans in Florida that are, they voted for DeSantis because most of them in South Florida, Miami-Dade County, they are white adjacent. they are white adjacent. They found freedom and a level of access by being closer to the white context of a person than being their original Hispanic self, which has their roots in Africa. Right? So yeah. Absolutely. See, when you begin to look at it, all of these institutions, all of these things that we're talking about, all of these things that we're facing right now. Yeah. Yeah. See, I think it's important for us to know where they come from. Absolutely. I don't think that we need to, act as if they don't exist. I think we need to acknowledge that, guess what? Yes, they do exist. And here is why they exist. They exist for these particular purposes. And let me say this one more again. If you are creating something and you are disallowing people to be a part of it based upon trivial things like color and this superfluous meritocracy. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have standards in this country. I'm not saying that everything should be a free for all. I think, yes, there are things that you should qualify for. I do believe that. I do believe that you have to work hard. I do believe, I have beautiful, bright, brilliant children because they come from beautiful, bright, brilliant parents. My wife and I, graduates of Florida A&M. My daughter, graduate of Spelman in Wake Forest. My son, graduate of Morehouse in New York University. My baby, graduated from FAMU, Florida A&M University. So we have a highly educated family. Yes. And, but we trained our children to be that. And I hate to see that word trained, but we reared them to have that kind of understanding and aspect about themselves. And this is why I fight so hard for education in our community. This is why I fight, because I know things like this are going to affect our children in the future. Absolutely. I knew it. There's somebody that's looking at, and see, one of the things that this country has done, especially, it has taken the poor white, the poor Southern white, and poor white in West Virginia, in the Bible Belt, and all that kind of stuff. It has the Rust Belt, and the rich people have made them seem like the reason why they're poor is because we let loose these black slaves, and they taking all this stuff from you, which is not true. It's not true at all. But it has been working. It has been working because, listen to me, there is an ilk that's trying to turn this country into a racist theocracy. What does that mean? That it's really about race, but they're using God. They're using God. One of the other cases that had no defendant, like this woman said, the Supreme Court said that this right-wing religious Christian woman who's an amateur website builder who made up a same-sex couple didn't have to do that those businesses now could disenfranchise and disallow those same-sex couples from getting a website done because she does not believe in the way that they live. Now, that is absolutely patently ridiculous, right? It is. It wasn't even a case. No, you missed it. There was not even a case. There wasn't even a defendant. But this particular Supreme Court picked it up because they're trying to use, this theology, this theocracy, this God nature, this Christian values kind of piece to continue to disenfranchise and to divide. And unfortunately, there's a whole lot of black churches that support. They sure do. Yes. They do. See, here's the deal. Now, when you don't agree with something from a Christian biblical perspective, the first thing, as a black person, the first thing you need to understand is that it was that same Bible that we read that they used to call us slaves and to keep us in servitude, to enslavement. They utilized the readings and the writings of Paul and twisted it for their own purpose and concern. Yeah, so they use that same God you standing up for and saying, well, y'all shouldn't be sure. That is not biblically, theologically, Jesus right is not the way you win a soul. That's not the way you get people to change and transform. And it's not how you see them. It's not what's right to you. It's what's right to him. Try it again. It's what's right to Christ. It's not what's right for you. It's not, if them holding hands bothers you, then don't look. Or, you could go and witness to them. And witnessing to them is not telling them how bad they are. It's telling them how good Jesus is. And letting Holy Spirit do the rest of the work. But that's not what Christianity, quote unquote, is in this country. It is a group of people meeting in a room and say, we don't like that, we don't like this, we don't like that. And then we're going to find the Bible that quasi supports how we see the world. Let me try it again. We're going to find the Bible verses and the scriptures and Leviticus and all those different kinds of things. And we're going to pick out the verses, cherry pick the verses that agree with how we see the world, our world perspective, our worldview. And then we're going to begin to preach it. And we're going to begin to put it in ideology. And we're going to begin to put it on, tell people this and tell people that. And we know somebody's going to pick it up because guess what? There's nothing that can divide black people, not like religion, like how they love their Lord. They love the Lord. They got good religion. Yeah, it might be a good one, but is it a biblical one? We're not asking me if you got good religion because I don't think there is a good religion if there's not a biblical religion. Because the same text that they use for dealing with same sex and things of that nature in Leviticus, if they keep reading, you shouldn't wear cotton and wool, but you should wear mixed fabrics. You shouldn't be eating seafood. You shouldn't be, you shouldn't be eating pork. There goes your 4th of July. It's in the same text, the same Mosaic law, the same thing. Absolutely. See, so when you begin to utilize it, but Jesus ain't never said nothing about it. Okay, I get that. I understand that. He did. He did say something about it, but didn't just say what Jesus said. You ain't got to add all of the hatred and the vitriol, right? You weren't raised and you weren't born in Paul's day. So you have to understand and study from a cultural context what Paul is even saying to the church at Corinth. Because that's mainly where he said it, at the church at Corinth in his first 2 letters. And actually his first letter. What was Paul really dealing with? Right? But for ages, the Bible and this whole Christianity thing has been utilized against people. I'm a student of it. I study it every day. I'm in school to study it. I'm in seminary to make sure because I'm tired of us getting up and spewing our hatred in the name of God. And what would Jesus do? You ain't got to know what would he do. You can see what he already did. Let me try it again. You don't have to WWJD. That's good for marketing. What would Jesus do? No. What did Jesus do? Not what would, as if we don't know. It's clear. It is clear. He was friends with sinners. He was friends with publicans, right? He did not disenfranchise and turn that woman that was caught in the very act of adultery. Because you know why? Her sin and her issue was utilized by religious people to trap him. If you read the text, that's what it was. It wasn't because they were worried about whether she was an adulteress, because if that was the case, where is the man? If they were so much worried about sin, if they were so much worried about upholding this righteous standard, where is the man? Because the text says she was caught in the very act. That means that there was a man there. That word, that phrase, very act, means the man was there. They were looking at them do it. My question is, where is the man? You saw the man there. How did y'all let the man go? Why is it just the woman that you drug out naked and dropped it before Jesus? Come on. These are questions that need answering. Good church folks. Why? Where is he? Where is he? And the text says they do this to test him to see what he was going to say. So it wasn't even about her issue. Because the truth of the matter is, they had been looking at that. They had known it. It was already in their heart. They were wishing it was them caught in the very act. How do you catch somebody in the very act if you ain't looking at the very act? Right? Jesus, watch this. Jesus writes on the ground and says, "Ye who are without sin, let him cast the first stone." And not anybody was able to drop a rock or to cast a stone. Everybody dropped their stone. Everybody dropped their rock. And that's something that's powerful there. I'm talking about what would Jesus? No, what did he do? He didn't hold that against her. He told her just go and sin no more. Right. This whole idea of how we have built up this hatred and this vitriol and how we say it. And listen, the anger that we release, and it divides us. It causes us to side on, and I'm talking to the black church, black pastors. It causes us to side on behalf of racists, of people who are controlling our faith to control our vote. Let me say it again. It is in partnership with people that tries to control our faith with the whole aspect of controlling our vote so that they can put people who are in there that vote and set policy against our interest as well. Boom. I mean, it's not hard if you stand back and you look at it, because that is the reality. That is what is going on. And so when we talk about this whole idea of freedom for justice, the whole idea of freedom and justice is that every man can live how he wants to live and desires to live, as long as, one, it does not disenfranchise or apprehend or upend anyone else. That's what freedom is the ability to have access and have the liberty to do what I want to do without infringing upon anyone else. That's what real freedom is. Controlled freedom does not come from people on the outside. Controlled freedom, it comes from on the inside of me. Now, laws are given to point out certain standards and not to violate certain orders. Right? But freedom is something that is organic, given by God in every human. And we cannot. I know that there's a lot of thou shalt nots in the Bible, but there's a whole of thou shalls. And we are proficient in preaching the thou shalt nots, and we are silent on the thou shalls. And the whole idea is that if we would do the work of loving our brother and introducing them, the one that first loved them, if we would introduce them with love to that individual and then let him change them, we'll have a better society. But setting up policy and disenfranchising people simply because you don't like, on behalf of God, I don't like you. How can you do that? Because I don't think that is something that he supports. I just do not. Listen, this is the Culture Call. Right here on Praise 93.3 FM with L. Spencer Smith. We've got a little bit more to go. Give me a call, 205-752-4800, or you can hit me up on the app. Do that, and let's have a wonderful, wonderful day. Don't miss it.
This is the world premiere.
Hey, family, and we are back right here on the Culture Call with L. Spencer Smith, Praise 93.3 FM. It's been an amazing day and still continues to be the best day of your life already. I'm speaking it and I believe it, and I know we got more days in the week. This day is the best day of your life. Heading forward, it only gets better. Yeah. From here, absolutely. And the Culture Call is starting it off for you. Listen, I'm telling you, you can hit me up, 205-752-4800, or you can hit me up on the app and let me know what you think about our conversation. And I know it is a provocative one and it's a controversial one, but it's a much needed and necessary conversation for us to have as we talk about freedom for who? On the day before the 4th, before we get into hot dogs and hamburgers and fried fish and seafood salad and ribs and chicken, before we even get there, we need to talk about freedom for who? That when this Declaration of Independence was actually done, who did that freedom and that independence, who was it from, right? Was it for all of us? Or we just fight in a war as black people and it didn't have anything to do with us because after we put down the muskets and stepped from behind the cannons and out of the trenches, we were right back in slavery in chains, right? So yeah, that's important as we talk about freedom for who, Listen, let me vector to something that I really want to talk about, and I'm probably going to talk about it more in the future because I think, especially as we move, I have a lot of white friends and, that when we talk and I love them dearly, some of the first pastors that helped me out when I first moved to this city almost 30 years ago, was a white guy, was a white congregation, Pastor Tim Pippins. Yeah. And, that they just blessed my heart. And when a lot of other people wouldn't talk to me, a lot of people that look like me wouldn't even have too much to do with me. Did he embrace me at all? Yeah, he did. Pastor Tim Pippins did. And I will never forget that. And, God has always given me a positive relationship, with my Caucasian brothers and sisters because I'm just that guy. They know I stand for what I stand for. I don't bite my tongue. I'm not so, I'm not so militant that I can't have a conversation, but I am knowledgeable and I bring to bear any kind of light of truth that needs to be brought to bear when, sometimes we have those conversations about race and situations. And, I believe that is a trusting from God because all of us can have race conversations and not get violent and vehement and all kind of stuff. Yeah, that part. So, I think, he's graced me to be able to have that conversation, to think on my toes and to think on my feet. I think that's very important. And one of the conversations that I have is this whole idea of white supremacy versus white people. White supremacy versus white people. And, sometimes talking to white people and my Caucasian friends, they think that when I'm talking about white supremacy, that I'm talking about white people. And, I have to break it down to them that white supremacy is a system of thinking. It is an ideology, right? And it has infused itself into most of the structures of modernity that, again, from the time that they created this pyramid of worth and value and created more than just the human race. Now there's a white race, there's a black race. Man, the moment that they took, African and darkened images and gave it white face, that a whole lot of the religious imagery and all of that, when you see that they paint themselves as the heroes, they paint themselves as the protagonists, they paint themselves as the positive, all of that, when you begin to do that, see, all of that is white supremacy because you're trying to purport that nothing would exist without us. And so we are the supreme factor. Well, see, to me, I understand that, I understand that when we say white supremacy, when we as black people say white supremacy or he's a white supremacist, it is that whole mindset that cogitates toward, white people being the apex and the supreme anything, right? And, non-melanated people are just, and that's what white people are. They, all of us have a degree of melanation. So white people do have a degree of melanation, but they can't produce it. They don't have that, you know. And so when we say white supremacy, we automatically know what we're talking about from a ideological perspective. We are not talking about all white people, except you've been affected by and continue to believe the ideology of white supremacy. Then you move simply, you're not just a white person, you're a white supremacist, right? Because you think, you know, that everything originated from white people when we know historically everything in the world started from the African continent, period. That's historical. I mean, the oldest bones, everything, you know, the Bible, religion, all of that happened not in Europe. No, that happened in from the African continent. They went down from the European continent, Rome. They went down into Egypt. They went down and to learn all of these things. The Moors, because the Muslims, they came up and taught you how to bathe, got you out of caves and taught you how to bathe and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's just taught them about cleanliness and all of these different kinds of things because they weren't practicing that. There was disease in Europe. That's where it was. I mean, that's not castigating anybody. That is telling us the truth, historical truth. And then in this dark ages, when the dark ages happen in history, is when you begin to put all of these things and set up these, you know, equate Africans with big lips and you know, you begin to make us look more ape-like, right? In your constructs, right? That's something that was important, right, to you in the dark ages and all of that, because of this whole white supremacy that you've been historically trying to push. But we know the difference between white supremacy and white people. The problem is that white people don't know the difference. They don't. They can't have a conversation about white supremacy and literally participate. A lot of them can't participate in a conversation about white supremacy as a white person because they think white supremacy and white people are synonymous. And the question you need to ask is not how come black people think that, because we know the difference. The issue is how come you don't? How come you get mad when we say something about white supremacy? How come you automatically see yourself, right? Because there is something in your mind that understands. Like I heard on this interview that this white mother was saying, listen, I have the privilege of not having, I live in a neighborhood in a system where my color is not even taken, it is not even taken in consideration, or it's given access because of my color. And she was saying how she taught her children that. She asked the children, as far as the CRT, or critical race theory, she asked her daughter, she said, who had just read the story of Ruby Bridges. And her daughter, you know, she asked the daughter, do you feel bad for Ruby Bridges? And she said, yes, because of how it made me feel sad because of how they treated her as a young girl, wouldn't let her into school. And she says, do you feel bad as a white person? And her daughter says, no, I don't. I feel sad at those white people that did that to her, that they didn't have anything else to do but then to congregate and keep her out of school. See, the child knows, and the mother said, my child understands the difference between her color and their ideology. She understands her color as a white girl, but she also knows how to differentiate her color from the acts that these vile people did. There were white abolitionists. There were people of Caucasian descent that fought for the rights and the freedoms of black folks as well. Absolutely. A lot of them started some of the HBCUs. Yes, absolutely. Coming from out of churches and all those different kinds of things. So the issue becomes why, as a white person, they have to learn how to hear white supremacy and understand it's an ideology. It's a political, societal, systematic pariah disease, right? That has absolutely nothing to do with who they are as a person. You can't even face up to the whole system that you started. right? And they get offended. And then they'll ignorantly say, oh, see, you always got to bring race and everything. That's reverse racism. I already told you there's really no such thing as reverse racism. There isn't. There isn't. No black people on the face of the earth has had any kind of power to disenfranchise and affect every area of human life of a white person. Nobody. They ain't even thinking about it. Wasn't even on the maps. The legend, the key. The only people who have done that on the earth have been white people. Right. That white supremacy is a pervasive system. It's historic and it's still going on now. A lot of the institutions. Right. And instead of acting like it doesn't exist or being glib when you trying to, acknowledging it, but the truth of the matter is, if you keep doing that, it'll continue to prevail. And the only way, just in case if I have anybody listen to me, white people or whoever, the only way that we can really deal with white supremacy is white people have to check their people. You have to check the white supremacists. The same way you want black people to check the black supremacists, the way that you want black people to check the Panthers, the way you want the black people to check the Nation of Islam and Farrakhan, you want us to check those folks the same way that you get on as talking about those people, you want us to check. Well, how come you don't check David Duke? How come you don't check Donald Trump? How come you don't check Ron DeSantis? How come you don't do that? You see, because I promise you, Farrakhan, Panthers, all of them, they do not affect American policy like those folks do. Because those are government officials running for president of the United States of all of us. So, yeah, it's different. Yeah, I said it. It's different. And not only is it different, here's the thing, y'all. And it's different. Yeah, it is different. You know that if Barack Obama had been anywhere adjacent to half of the things, a fraction, a modicum of the things that Donald Trump have been indicted for, man, please, the impeachment vote would have went 4 or 5 times. What? Are you serious? You would have changed the law to make sure he nor his children, grandchildren could have ever run for the president again. The very fact that Donald Trump can run for the presidency again, having been indicted all around the country for what he's been indicted for, and you still got people, that is, one, delusional, but it is delusion based on white supremacy. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it will never change. It will never change if it is not spoken of by white people. That you can be white and not be a supremacist. History has already documented that. But for some people, white supremacy works for them. It makes them feel bad. Makes them feel good about their bad situation because their bad situation is blamed on someone else. That's what white supremacy does. It blames the deficiency of a people, of those who can't do any better, those who are poor, those who are lowly educated, those who are disenfranchised, those who he would never hang around, those who he would disenfranchise. Absolutely. But it makes you feel better. And we can do better in this country. I promise you we can. When we understand that there are systems that all of us need to fight. Absolutely. Listen, this is the Culture Call with L. Spencer Smith right here on Praise 93.3. It's a marvelous day. Got a little bit more left. I need you to keep it locking and rocking right here. Don't miss it. Well, family, we have come to the end of another amazing episode of the Culture Call right here with L. Spencer Smith on Praise 93.3 FM. Yes, the day before the 4th, and I hope and pray that we've giving some enlightenment into this whole, freedom for who? Should we really celebrate the 4th? That's up to you. I'm not here to skew you one way or the other, but I am telling you that there is something going on in this country that we need to desperately pay attention to. With the SCOTUS decision, the Supreme Court adjudication, it causes us to step back a little bit. I think it's important that we do that. I think that we really need, as a community, as a people, I know as a black man, it made me kind of just, where are we going here? What's really going on? Are we going back to the days? Do they really want to go back to the days of seeing somebody, brilliant, back in shackles, picking their cotton? What is really going on? Is it that they really want to see people, and have the privilege, of stepping on their necks and going back to calling me boy? Are they trying to go back to, colored water fountains and colored bathrooms and us sitting at the back of the bus? I don't think that's where they want to go. But I do think that there is a part of this society that wants to hold on to the control that white supremacy has given them. There are people that really, really, and that's not just white folks, it's black folks too, that want to hold on to the access that white adjacency has brought into their lives. I really do believe that. I think, and it's a sad tragedy, because guess what? You can't roll the time back. And the only way, here it is now, this is the caveat to that. The only way that they can roll that time back is if we sit and do nothing. I think a wonderful quote to end this show on is from, yes, the late Honorable Thurgood Marshall. When he said at his University of Virginia commencement speech in 1978, he said, where you see wrong or inequality or injustice, speak out, because this is your country. This is your democracy. Make it, protect it, and pass it on. I think we have a responsibility to, as the late Honorable Thurgood Marshall says, this is our country and this is our democracy, that we do need to stand up for freedom and liberty for everybody, even if they don't do life like ours. Listen, it's been a really, really provocative day, an exciting day. Yes. But listen, I want to invite you back tomorrow. Don't miss it at 10 a.m., 12 p.m. We'll be right here on the Culture Call with L. Spencer Smith on Praise 93.3 FM. And as my grandmama and my mama would say at the end of every phone call, I love you a bushel, I love you a peck, and I love you a hug around the neck. This is the Culture Call. Have a beautiful, blessed, and peaceful Monday.